Good morning, my dear students. So, today we are going to start with a new chapter, chapter 15th, The Crown of Diamonds, written by Sir Arthur Conan Doyle. So, let's start. So, children, it's a detective story. Now, what is a detective story? A detective story is a type of story that usually features a crime and a detective to solve the crime. Clues are found, suspects are questioned, and the detective must evaluate all the evidence in order to solve it. Now, here you can see the world famous detective Sherlock Holmes. So, let's start. First, before we go to the text explanation, let us go through the summary first. This is story from the Sherlock Holmes series written by Arthur Conan Doyle about the titular detective who solves strange mysteries and cases along with his friend Dr. Watson. In this story, Holmes is approached by Alexander Holder, a banker with a case. One day, Holder is given a valuable crown as insurance for a loan by a noble person. He takes the crown back home that night. Holder is woken by a sound that night and sees his son, Arthur, holding the crown with a piece containing 3 diamonds missing. So, Holder comes to Holmes. Holmes investigates the scene of the crime and notices strange footprints outside. The next day, Holmes gives Holder the missing piece to Holder's great surprise. Holmes explains that Holder's niece, Mary, had stolen the crown and given it to her secret lover, George Bunwell. But Arthur had seen them and tried to take the crown from Bunwell. A piece had broken off from the crown and Bunwell had escaped with it. Holmes goes to Bunwell's house disguised as a beggar and matches his shoe with the footprints. Then he confronts Bunwell and gets the missing piece from him and thus solves the case. Now the text explanation. The world famous detective Sherlock Holmes is presented with a new case to solve. On a bright, cold morning, as Dr. Watson was looking out the window, he saw a strange man coming down the street. Although the man was impeccably dressed, he was running and waving his hands madly and seemed to be in great distress. Watson was surprised because it seemed the man had come to see his friend, the detective Sherlock Holmes. A few minutes later, he was in the room. He looked so grief stricken that Holmes pushed him down into a chair and talked to him gently. I suppose you think I'm quite mad? The man said. I think you have some great trouble and you have come to ask for my help, Holmes replied. Thus encouraged, the man began to recount his tale. Children, I have divided this chapter into 2 parts as it's a little bit long. So now the explanation. So on a bright cold morning, Dr. Watson, he was looking out the window and he saw a strange man coming down the street. So the man, he was impeccably dressed. Now here the meaning of impeccably means perfectly without fault. So that man, he was perfectly dressed, that man, he was perfectly dressed and was running and waving his hands madly, so that anyone can make out that he was in great distress. So Dr. Watson, he was surprised because the man seemed that he had come to see his friend, the Sherlock Holmes. A few minutes later, he was sitting in their room. So Holmes, he observed that the man he that Sherlock Holmes, he observed the man that he is in some kinds of trouble. So he tried to talk to him very politely. So on this, Holmes replied, or we can say he asked that maybe you have some great trouble. So the man he was encouraged by Holmes, so he began or restarted his tale. He was Mr. Alexander Holder, head of the Bank of Holder and Stevenson of Threadneedle Street in London. A few days ago, he had been visited by one of the noblest personages in England. The man had seemed to be in a great hurry and had wanted a loan of £50,000. He had offered to leave a valuable public item in Holder's care with the assurance that he would return the money in 4 days. The crown of diamonds, one of England's most precious possessions, was a beautiful piece of jewelry and was made up of 39 huge diamonds. So, as the man, he was encouraged by Holmes, so he began or he restarted his tale. He introduced himself that he was Alexander Holder, the head of the Bank of Holder, which is located at Threadneedle Street in London. So, a few days ago, a novelist person had visited him and because he needed some money. So, in return of that money or the loan, he was ready to place something as assurance, and it was a crown of diamonds. So, the crown of diamonds. It was a beautiful piece of jewelry which was made up of 39 hues diamond, and it was one of England's most precious possessions. Next, the banker had reluctantly agreed to this secret transaction in spite of his misgivings. That night, Holder had taken the crown home with him for safekeeping. Holder lived in a house called Fairbank in Streatham with his son Arthur and his orphan niece Mary. The only other people in the house were his trusted servants. So, in spite of feeling that something is not going to be right, he agreed to these transactions and he took the crown home with himself. So, he lived in a house with. So he lived in a house called Fairbank in Streatham with his son Arthur and his orphan niece Mary. So, in the next, Arthur Holder was a Arthur Holder was a spoiled wastrel who spent his life gambling and betting. First, children, misgivings means feelings of doubt or worry. And now here, wastrel. Wastrel means a person who wastes all their time or money. So, Wastrel who spent his life gambling and betting. He was always in debt because of his bad habits. Arthur was deeply in love with Mary, who was a beautiful, loving, and gentle woman. The only other people who often visited the house at Streatham was Arthur's friend, Sir George Bunwell. The senior Holder did not trust Bunwell in spite of his easy manners and pleasant demeanor. So now here demeanor means the way that someone looks or behaves. That evening Mr. Holder had told his son and niece about the crown which he had kept locked in his sitting room. As Holder was going to bed, he had glimpsed Mary standing near a side window in the hall. Thinking nothing of this, he had bidden her good night and gone upstairs. It was around 2 in the morning when Holder had suddenly woken up. He had heard a sound and then footsteps in his sitting room. He rushed to the room and saw a strange sight. So Arthur Holders, he was a spoiled wrestler. Like he was not a good person. He spent his time or life gambling and betting, and he was always in debt because of his bad habits. And he was deeply in love with his cousin Mary, who was a beautiful, loving, and gentle woman. So the other person who visited their house was Sir George Bunwell, who was Arthur's friend, and he was very pleasant, kind person. That evening, Mr. Holder had told his son and niece Mary about the crown which he had kept locked in his sitting room. So as he was going to his bed, he saw Mary standing near a side of window in the hall, and he thought that it was not a big deal. So he just went back to his room. It was around 2 in the morning. Mr. Halder heard some uh, voices, some noise, and he suddenly woken up and went in his sitting room. There he saw a strange sight. Arthur, you thief, how dare you touch the crown? His son, dressed only in his shirt and trousers, had been holding the crown in his hands and had apparently been trying to bend it. He dropped it as soon as he saw his father. Halder picked up the crown and was flabbergasted. Now, flabbergasted means shocked or surprised. So he was flabbergasted to see that one of its gold corner with three of the diamonds was missing. Where are the three diamonds? He shouted. But they cannot be missing, Arthur whispered. You have stolen them, you evil boy, his father cried. Arthur's face turned red. You have called me enough names, father. I won't say another word. Well, you can say them to the police, Halder said. So here he saw a strange sight. What he saw? He saw Arthur with a crown. So his son dressed only in his shirt and trousers, and he was holding the crown in his hands, but Halder picked up the crown and was shocked to see that one of its gold crown with three of the diamonds were missing. When he saw that three diamonds were missing, he shouted, or he immediately questioned him, that where are the three diamonds? You have stolen them, you evil boy. So, because of these words, he started getting very angry, and he said to his father that he had called him enough names, and now he would not say another words. And Halder, he also get angry, and he said that he would hand him over to the police. So thank you, children, and next pages will be discussed in the next video. Thank you so much.